here for Blog TV and for YouTube. And
okay.
I'm talking with John DeNugent, JohnDeNugent.com. And this turn about reincarnation, I think it's accurate. If 40 years ago, I wrote a story about a man, Lucifer, coming into a party. Everybody's getting high, everybody's smoking a joint. He pulls out, his nose rose as the door closed, and his hand reached inside his clothes. Try some of mine. It's really quite fine, like nothing you've ever tried before. As I took a toke, no one spoke. The power of his presence cast a spell. Suddenly, I fell into a well of depths I've never delved before. Insane, like the leaf in a hurricane. Out of this plane we were torn. My guest, I could see, steady and free. I cried, how can this be? He said, you can control the winds of destiny. You can be a leaf no more. Finally somebody said, God, stay. He turns to go. They say, God, stay. Show us a way so in hell our souls won't burn. And the guest says, your God doesn't care. My burden he doesn't share. Yet still of me you say, beware. Of hell you shouldn't care. You can't go, 'cause you are there. And you stay till you pay before you go. Before you go, and before you ascend, before you grow, before you know. That whole poem was written, The Guest is what it was called, and it was written to the meter and everything that the Raven, that Edgar Allan Poe's Raven was.
Oh yes, great poem.
So that kind of set the whole stage for the novel that I'm working on now, that I started 40 years ago. And my character, I wrote about his future segment when he came back as a man called Solomon, wealthiest man in the world, supposedly trained by the Illuminati to be the Antichrist. And he came to the United States and was one of the richest men, became one of the richest men in the world. And half of the Christians thought he was the Antichrist. They thought he was the devil, because he looked a little like the devil. Looked like me, actually. and the Jews thought he was the Messiah. And the kicker here that I planned 40 years ago is that he was both. And what he did in his actions by abolishing all the laws against victimless crimes, in emptying the prisons in the United States, where right now we've got one, and I didn't know this when I wrote it, but we've got 1 in every 31 Americans in prison on parole or on probation right now. That's more than any so-called communist country out there. And 3 communist countries went to war against Adolf Hitler. England, the Soviet Union, and America. And nobody knows that. Nobody understands that. The Jews declared war on German people, not Hitler, on the German people, with a full-page ad in the New York Times before World War II started. Is that right? Is that accurate? Am I accurate on that?
Well, basically you are. What we're dealing with, and when I look at John 8:44, it's a lot of people who are white nationalists know that phrase, when Jesus said to the Jewish leaders, "You are from your father, the devil, and you seek to do the lusts of your father." He was a murderer and a liar from the beginning, and he's basically saying the nature of these people is different from that of a normal person who is basically altruistic and basically decent. I mean, if people are well led, most people are decent and will do the right thing. They have good leaders and good role models to follow. But he was saying, you cannot hear my message because there's no truth in you. They're from a lower world. He said, you are from your father, the devil. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought about reincarnation, and finished reading a very recent book, The History of Anti-Semitism, I began to realize that the Khazar Jews are, as they say in Latin, sui generis. They're of their own kind, they're of their own species. There's no other people on the earth like these Jews in wickedness and ruthlessness and conscience-free actions.
You mean kind of like their ancestors, the Neanderthals?
Exactly, and then after they were Neanderthals, then they were these Apiru, which were a tribe of roving mercenaries and hitmen and archers for hire, and the governors in ancient Egypt were complaining about these Apiru. But these are a bunch of thugs, and we've known throughout history, whether it's them or the gypsies or others, you can have actually roaming clans of criminals living out in the forests and being highwaymen, and they breed with each other, or they abduct and snatch women to cook for them and have sex with them, and you breed a gene pool of criminals, and they roam around causing trouble. They're fences, they're pimps, they're prostitutes, they're thieves, they're killers, and it's kind of like a nomadic kind of mafia. Travels about, and you read the records of ancient Egypt under the pharaohs, and there was one case here where the governor of Palestine under the Egyptians is writing to the pharaohs, like, this is my second letter to you, your majesty, and what are we going to do about these Apiru? If you look in Wikipedia, under the Apiru, A-P-I-R-U, the Apiru became the Hebrews.
Now, somebody said something on the chat room here. I don't understand why the U.S. is always involved in trying to get peace over there. There will never be peace over there. And I said, the U.S. is not looking for peace. Because here is the Rothschild formula. Now, folks, this was put in my magazine, one of the last magazines that I did here, the Free American, betrayed. I got Nacho Ramos on the cover of this, a Border Patrol agent that was betrayed by Homeland Security.
Yeah.
And on page 41 of that, and this is available, folks. This is available on my website, on the archives page, on the back issues page of my website. On page 41, I've got the Rothschild formula here. War is the ultimate discipline to any government. If it can successfully meet the challenge of war, it will survive. If it cannot, it will perish. All else is secondary. The sanctity of its laws, the prosperity of its citizens, the solvency of its treasury will quickly be sacrificed by any government in a primal act of self-survival. All that is necessary, therefore, to ensure that a government will maintain or expand its debt is to involve it in war or threat of war. The greater the threat of war and the more destructive the war, the greater need for debt.
Yeah.
To involve a country in...
With what happened to the South after the so-called Civil War, or what happened to Germany after World War II, is people are desperate. They don't want to lose and be occupied by an enemy country because they're afraid they're going to suffer a horrible post-war period. And so people will borrow money like crazy to stave off defeat.
That's right. Now, the ultimate obstacle... Hold on just a moment. Let me finish this. To involve a country in war or threat of war, it would be necessary for it to have enemies with credible military might. If such enemies already exist, all the better. If they exist but lack military strength, it will be necessary to provide them money to build their war machine. If an enemy does not exist at all, then it will be necessary to create one by financing the rise of a hostile regime. The ultimate obstacle to a government which declines to finance wars through debt. The ultimate obstacle is a government which declines to finance wars through debt. Although this seldom happens, when it does, it'll be necessary to encourage internal political opposition, insurrection, or revolution to replace that government with one that is more compliant to our will. The assassination of heads of state could play an important role in this process. No nation. Now listen to this, folks, especially you guys on the chat room, we're talking about peace. No nation can be allowed to remain militarily stronger than its adversaries, for this could lead to peace and a reduction of debt. To accomplish this balance of power, it is necessary to finance both sides of the conflict. Unless one of the combatants is hostile to our interests and therefore must be destroyed, neither side should be allowed a decisive victory or defeat. While we must always proclaim the virtues of peace, the unspoken objective is perpetual war. And that's the one of the last issues of the Free American that I got out.
Very, very good. Very good. Well, that's very profound. Very profound. Well, I think we're going to have to return to a true religion and a true belief in God, because the J Team on paper really controls just about everything. They don't have our guns, they don't control the internet, and we don't have hate speech laws. So we can still win this thing, but we're going to have to create a mass movement. We're going to have to do it now. That's my view.
I agree with that. And what I've said, if you can, and the whole Liberty Village concept, John, can be done in a neighborhood, on a block. If you dig up that crabgrass in your backyard and plant a garden, and you put a solar and wind on your roof so you don't have to buy your electricity from the power companies, you get it straight from God, then you don't really need the banksters or the government for nothing.
Yeah.
And this is the way the way civilization, every civilization was built on the self-sufficient family farm, according to Richard Kelly Hoskins. And that is my answer to this whole New World Order global government bullshit. Yeah. And I believe your solitarian solution, I believe you've got that mindset and see that vision as clearly as I do.
Yeah. Well, one thing, there has been an evolution in my understanding of things here, because when I first read about the Georgia Guidestones and how the J-Team's intention was to reduce the world population by 90% and just have 500 million people left as slaves, I began to take that more seriously and see the evidence for it. I began to realize that there's no way that we can retreat like the Amish into some pocket of the country and be safe just by doing that. Because look, if the air is full of radioactivity that's blowing our way, if the water is full of fluoride and things that make us docile, if the food is poisoned or genetically modified, like with these Monsanto seeds, this, what do they call it, the Roundup and so forth, and if they're shooting frequencies and rays and HAARP through our bodies and cell phones, and you can't just go off in the woods and be unmolested and be left alone. They're coming after you, even if you find some little white village full of free white men and so forth. They're going to come after you there, and they would not permit such an experiment to succeed, because every white person in the country would want to move there or demand the same thing where they are without having to move. Restore the U.S. Constitution, restore religion, prayer in schools, end abortion.
With the Liberty Village concept, yes, you can have a black village that would have the best barbecue in the world. You can have a Mexican village, and that's where we go anytime we want some tacos or good enchiladas. And you can have the white villages too. If we're working together here and living, the Ten Commandments, tells you not to have adultery. That don't mean screwing around on your wife. That means don't adulterate your blood. because every race has its strong points.
Yep, very true.
And that's where I fall out of favor with the Christian identity, because if you're advocating going out and killing all the blacks, going out and killing all the Jews, going out and killing all of the Mexicans, then you're as evil as the Zionists that we're trying to oppose.
Well, yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. We've got to make sure that our motive is primarily we love our own people, and what we hate is not other races, but we hate the psychopaths in our own white race and the psychopaths in other races, because they're incorrigible. By definition, a psychopath has no conscience, no love, and never will. They're a special demonic kind of being. Unfortunately, they exist among us, and that's what Martha Stout said in her bestseller in the year 2005, The Sociopath Next Door. They're born evil. They torture animals as kids. They set fires. They urinate in their beds. 3 key traits of psychopaths. They're born that way, and the brain scans show they're evil. The whole neurological brain scan shows a completely different frequency in their brain. They're sadistic bastards and liars, and most of all, they defame people. And you've experienced that, I know, Clay, and it's hurt you quite a bit. You try to go into your favorite bar, and somebody's been spreading defamations against you. It's a low-budget way to destroy somebody and put them in danger. Because if you have no supporters and people that are helping you, then the government can just arrest you and indict you on some crazy accusation. And next thing you know, you're in prison, and all you got is a public defender who's working for the same Jewish feds, and you get 20 years in prison, or you get murdered in prison. In fact, if you look at my blog that's up right now, they've listed 9 people who have been whistleblowers about the Gulf oil spill who have been murdered in the last year. If they defame you, 2 of these people, they said, well, we found images of child porn on his computer, on his hard drive. Yeah, right. Yeah, they raid your house, take away your computer, and gee, look at what we found here. We found child porn. You know, and
well, that's exactly
do this kind of thing to you.
That's exactly what happened to Edgar Steele. He was on my show. He came on my show, and a few months later, after having a heart attack, after surviving a heart attack, a few months later, he is suddenly charged, set up by an ADL operative, a Southern Poverty Law operative, an FBI informant, and charged with hiring a hitman to kill his wife. And the hitman he supposedly hired is the snitch that modified the recordings. And the judge that is over hearing the case won't allow expert testimony from out of the country.
Hey, look, if you can't trust a convicted felon, who can you trust, Clay? Yeah. Is Larry, what's his name, Larry Howard or Franklin?
Yeah, I think it was Franklin.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. But, you know, I mean, this is just absolutely outrageous. Absolutely outrageous what's going on with Edgar Steele.
I just spoke with his wife's attorney last night, and he says it's not going good. It's not going good. They had an expert that was going to testify by video from overseas.
Yeah.
And the judge says, no, he got to be here in the morning. He's got to be here in the morning.
There you go.
So he's being railroaded, and he's going to spend, if they get away with this,
yeah,
he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. He loves his wife loves him. He had no desire to kill her, no desire to murder her. And the man that planted the bombs in both of their vehicles, they planned on on killing both of them. He planned on killing both of them.
Yeah.
He's going to get cut loose here very shortly.
Well, it reminds me also of the case of Sean Walker, who had been the chairman of the National Alliance in the post-Dr. Pierce era. And so he supposedly got into some kind of minor fight in a bar in Salt Lake City with a Mexican. And this Mexican was so terribly injured Then he went skiing the next day on the ski slopes. 2 years later, the ADL approaches this Mexican and says, "Hey, don't you think that, that little bar fight was a hate crime? And don't you want to press charges?" So 2 years after this micro incident where nobody was hurt, and by the way, Sean Walker says he wasn't even there. He smelled trouble and got out. That's what he says anyways. Sean Walker is arrested, and on the testimony of a convicted felon, Sean Walker gets 6 years in prison. And then they take him away from his wife, who's in California, and they put him in a federal prison in Minnesota, 2,000 miles away. They never put you in a federal prison near your wife and your kids. If the goal is rehabilitation, then you should be in a prison near your family. So, you're normal.
That ain't the goal. That ain't the way it works. And what they've tried to do with me, as soon as my book came out, I keep in mind I've been in Arizona for years, over 6 years. Over 6 years ago, I started a motorcycle magazine.
Yeah.
And they killed that. They killed that.
Yeah.
And then they tried to kill me.
Yep.
And now, after my book came out, suddenly I walk into a biker bar, and somebody I don't know, somebody I've never seen, somebody I've never talked to, somebody that doesn't know me, starts spreading a rumor that I'm selling that book to raise money for a snitch named Huevos.
Yeah.
What they're trying to do is get me in a fight, and if I get in a fight, if I win, I go to jail. If I lose, I go to a hospital, and I know I will never get out of another hospital.
Yeah, these people are so diabolical. Well, I have to go back to one of the things that Jesus said. He says, if you have a problem with your brother, go to him before the sun sets. And, tell him what the problem is. It is so wicked and unchristian, the way people will gobble up gossip. Of course, every checkout counter at the Walmart, they've got 5 different gossip magazines. They're promoting gossip. Let's talk about people's private lives with unverified rumors. It's extremely wicked. If you hear something rotten about somebody else or their personal life, you should go to that person and say, listen, John or Clay or whatever, you do some good work. I know you to be a good person, but I heard some really weird stuff, and I wanted to tell you these rumors that are going around about you, and I want to hear from the horse's mouth what you have to say about it, out of fairness to you. That's what people should do.
Nobody in Arizona has ever asked me anything. Nobody has come up and said, is this true, Clay? My answer is, no, I don't know anybody named Huevos. How can I send money to somebody who I don't even know his name?
Yeah.
Huevos was a snitch and he's responsible for so-and-so's husband, doing time. So, so what was the man doing that he got time for? How am I supposed to know who this guy is? I just got here 2 years ago. I don't know anything.
Yep. Well, we have to understand the motive. The motive is, if you're a counterculture person, if you're fighting against this wicked government, okay, people looking for, as I explained in my first spiritual video, people looking for what is called a positive cover story. And Catherine Austin Fitz uses that phrase, a positive cover story. The thing is, you want to bug out. You want an excuse to not support people like Clayton Douglas or John DeNugent or other people who are fighting for the truth and who are saying, take risks at my side and we'll fight the government together. We may be persecuted, we may be murdered, but as patriots, we have to stand up for our country's liberties. And now they're looking for an excuse to not help you and me. And the excuse is, well, I heard some crazy about Clayton Douglas. Listen, let me tell you what I heard. But they're eager to believe it because then they don't have to do anything.
They tried to do that to me at the Breakfast Club that I've been going to for 2 years, and I've been speaking at the Breakfast Club in Tucson for 10 years or more.
Yep.
I sold my magazines at the Breakfast Club every month for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And suddenly the Jews in the Breakfast Club tried to get me out, tried to put me down, tried to take me out, tried to get me to leave, tried to push me away, tried to vote me out, couldn't do it.
Yep.
So they started another meeting at another restaurant, 2 or 3 miles away.
I know how these people operate.
And it's incredible, you know. It's like, why did you go over there? Oh well, this guy's a billionaire and he's running for mayor, and so the whole meeting has turned in promoting a Jew for mayor.
Yep.
And trying to say that he's a billionaire when all he's ever done is file multi-million-dollar lawsuits against city officials because they didn't answer his bullshit little summons.
Yeah. Yep.
So they're operating under the color of law. And I finally explained to people. I said, what happens if Marshall Home wins? What happens if he wins this lawsuit? Who's going to pay this multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar lawsuit? Oh, you.
Yeah. Yep. I know. Well, listen, Clay, I probably should get back. I've got my staff here, and we've got to have a staff meeting. So if you'll excuse me,
I will certainly excuse you. I appreciate you hanging out for that extra 30 minutes, and you call me anytime, John. If there's I am probably going to start working on modifying my Liberty Village site and doing it more as a business plan. And this ain't a way for just ain't a way for me to make money. It's a way to save everybody money. It's a way to buy wholesale. It's called a cooperative. It works in Europe, works in European societies real well, and I believe we can do it here. John,
good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you being with me, bud.
Thanks for having me on, Clay. It's an honor as always.
All right.
Take care, brother. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. Doing this little extra bit here. And I want to let you know I've got 3 books here to sell. I need orders on it. You can be reading this tonight for $20 sent to me, Clay at Free American by PayPal. You can be reading Mystery Babylon, the Israelite Handbook for True Christians, the New World Order Unveiled. They'll tell you the whole story about what they've tried to do to me, what they've done to others. You can get a hard copy too. And the fiction books are here too. This is 2 in a series. One Bloody Alabaster Eye is the first in the series, and Deadly Flashes of Silver is the second in the series. $20 each, folks. That'll help keep the show on the air, help keep me on the road, help keep me alive, and help me fight this whole demonic plague that we've got. Go to freeamerican.com. You can read it. You can hear it. You can hear all of my shows. And listen to my shows. Listen to my words. Read my work. I've got half of the books up there. You can read the first half of the books on my website. You can read what's happened to me over the last 6 years. You want to fight on the right side? Here it is. God bless. freeamerican.com